Alright, so this is my mobile coffee setup. Got my water boiling, so I'm going to pull that off the boil by unplugging my coil. You can see there. This is a handy tool. Be sure that it is fully submerged before plugging it in, and leave it submerged until you unplug it. But it's handy to have in a travel coffee setup. I'm going to measure out my beans. I'm using AeroPress today, which is my go-to travel setup. With an AeroPress, I usually do 17 grams, and that should do it. I'll put a link to all the gear that I use in the video, or in the comments of the video. Today I'm having Phil and Sebastian coffee. It's an Ethiopian coffee that I've really enjoyed while I've been here on this trip. First time I've ever had Phil and Sebastian, so I don't know what the rest of their stuff is like, but if this is any indication, it's fantastic. So I've got this hand grinder. I purchased it because it fits nicely in my AeroPress and makes for less bulk in travel and packing. It's preset to the grind that I want for my AeroPress, and so should do the job nicely. I've got my thermometer here in my water, and I'm at 198, which is a little cool for what I normally do. I like my coffee brewed around 203, give or take a couple of degrees. They're going to be just shy, it looks like. It's okay, I can reset that up. Okay. So that's all my coffee grinding complete. Set that to the side. Again, it's fully submerged before plugging it in. Plug it in, we'll bring the temperature up a bit further. I'm not going to need my scale because everything is pre-measured to a full AeroPress. And I do the inverted method, which is additional immersion time. You can do the other way where you hold a vacuum on it, or even use an AeroPress as a pour over, but this is my preferred method. I do have this disc filter that I use on occasion when I travel. I typically like to have the paper filter more so than the disc. I've got the heavy gauge disc by Able Brewing, and it works nicely as additional structure in packing. I can fit the discs and the filters and the cap all in my travel mug, which is really handy. So I'm going to wet this paper. The water I have on standby. And while that's finishing up, I think I've got my temperature back up to where I want it. So again, unplug the coil. That should cool pretty quickly. I'm at 204, which is perfect. Add my coffee, which we measured earlier. Move all of that out of the way. I do like this temp probe because it provides me a clock as well. So I've got a timer on it. And this is sloppy. If you can use a coffee, big coffee pot, that'd be even better. But mugs work, they're just a little sloppy. Alright, so about a 30-second bloom. It's a little more water than I wanted, but we'll let that go. This is all really designed to give me good coffee with very low bulk. I can travel with it very easily. I like my mug. I've got a 300 milliliter Ninja Prepper titanium double-walled mug, and that gives me the room for my filters, for my filter basket, for my AeroPress, as well as I can pre-measure out a couple of batches of 17 grams and not even have to bring my scale at all, which is very nice. So the rest of the water goes in, up to the very top, Try not to make a big mess. Gonna definitely have some spilling. There's no pour spout. Alright, so sloppy as you can see. But we're gonna give that a stir. After that stir is done, really it's just a matter of time. I like about 3.5 minutes of total dwell time before I press. And because of that, I'm going to have some time to talk through the setup and the thinking. So I like AeroPress. It's not my go-to. I usually work with a Chemex or a V60. I like pour-overs, but bringing all of that gear is both fragile and bulky, so it's cumbersome to have all of that in your carry-on. This setup takes very little space and it's pretty hardy, so I can do quite a bit. The reason I have the coil is because I don't always have a consistent source of water that can be dialed in to 203. With the microwave, you can heat it up above 203 and let it come down to temp and bring your thermometer, and that'll be fine. Some places have coffee pots that'll get it to boiling. Some places have hot water for tea, and all those are options, but wildly inconsistent. So I want the control over that variable, and so I have that coil. You can bring maybe a butane torch or something along those lines that can heat water, but those are harder to get through airports. So that coil works out great. It doesn't work so well when I'm camping away from power, though. So I like the AeroPress because it's compact, because it still yields a good cup. The results are more like an Americano than some of the other methods I mentioned. I like Americanos if I'm going to have an espresso drink. That's typically what I go for. Some coffees really stand up well to milk and some don't, but you can get a pretty good sense of what that coffee is like in an Americano. And so this is a really great option for somebody who likes that type of drink and wants to be able to travel something light. The thing that the AeroPress brings that the others don't is pressure. So there are 3 components to extract the goodness from coffee. You've got chemical, which is done in a cold brew method. There's no heat applied. It's only the water as a solvent pulling the goodness out of the coffee. Once you introduce heat, that's where you get most standard coffees from your Mr. Coffee, your coffee pots, your bun makers, your all sorts of things, Chemex, V60, like I already mentioned. There's an endless supply of those, French press even, because you don't get the same kind of pressure that you get with the AeroPress. But because you're adding pressure, which is that third variable, what you would get in espresso, you get a little bit of a different character in your coffee. So you'll see here there's a light line right above or right below the plunger, and that's the crema. That's the oils and the CO2 and that kind of stuff, and it all is at the very top, floats, and so you'll see it go into the grounds. If you want a less bitter cup, stop before you hear it go through the very base. You'll actually see it descend into the grounds, and that'll be a good indicator for you to stop. I like the full expression of the coffee for the most part. I've really enjoyed it in this coffee, so I'll press all the way through. It also makes for very easy cleanup. This is a simple to address situation. So if that comes off, you can kick the puck out. But there is a delicious cup of coffee, as expected. Enjoy.